Okay, so get this deep dive into the soul warrior Ivan. It's really changed my perspective on things.
Go
We're
on.
really going deep into chapter 4, the power of the heart. And, well, it's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's way deeper than that. Like how compassion can actually transform how we live and work, even how we feel pain.
It's interesting, right? What's fascinating to me is how Abbood Tamimi takes compassion and puts it into places you wouldn't expect. It's not just some soft skill, it's practical, a way of thinking that gets things done.
Yeah. Who knew there was a link between compassion and pain relief? When I read about that Stanford study, whoa, feeling compassion can be like taking a painkiller.
It shows just how connected our emotions and our bodies are. That study, they found the part of the brain that deals with pain. It's the same area that's active when we feel love.
Yeah.
Makes you think, what if we use compassion more on purpose? Not just for pain, but to feel better overall.
Yeah. Instead of always grabbing a pill, we tap into this inner pharmacy of compassion. It could change everything. And remind me, there's this quote from the chapter, it really stuck with me. Your heart is the lens through which you will be able to see and understand people better. Compassion is like X-ray vision into other people's hearts and minds.
Love that. The heart as a lens, right? It's all about empathy, emotional intelligence, which are key for strong relationships, personal life, work life, all of it.
Makes you realize how often we judge people without really getting why they do what they do.
For sure. But with compassion, you understand their motivations, their struggles, what they've been through. It's giving others the same understanding we'd want for ourselves, especially people who are different.
It's choosing to see the world through a compassionate lens, even when it's tough. And you know what else got me? The author's take on leadership, on business. This whole thing about a company caring more about its employees' personal goals than just making money, that's wild.
Totally different from how things usually are. That self-evaluation system he talks about, where employees figure out their own dreams and the company helps them get there. It's like flipping the script.
Can you imagine? Your performance reviews about how close you are to your dreams, not how much money you made the company, sounds almost too good to be true.
It does make you think, right? It could mean employees are way more motivated, they find more meaning in their work, maybe even stick around longer. But there are definitely challenges to think about.
Yeah, if everyone's off chasing their own dreams, how does the company reach its goals? Got to be a balance somewhere.
Exactly. Needs a ton of trust, everyone talking openly, and employees and the company being on the same page. It won't work everywhere. Got to be carefully thought out.
Sounds like it's more about building a specific kind of company culture. One built on compassion and respect. Kind of like what we were saying about the heart lens, right?
Exactly. It goes back to his main point. Compassion isn't about just being nice. It's deeper. It's how you approach everything in life. Your relationships, how you do business, everything.
It's not always about big changes, though, right? The chapter also talks about doing small acts of kindness every day.
Yeah, for sure. He tells this story about buying toys for refugee kids during Eid al-Adha. It wasn't a huge thing, but it really affected those kids. And him, too.
You know, it struck me how those little acts of giving brought him so much happiness. It's like compassion spreads, not just to the person receiving it, but to the giver, too.
There's science behind that. Studies show that helping others releases endorphins, those feel-good chemicals in our brains. Compassion isn't just about being selfless. It's good for us, too.
So it's better to give than to receive, but actually backed by science. The chapter gets real, though. It talks about how tough the world can be and how hard it is to stay compassionate when there's so much suffering.
Right, he brings up police brutality. It's a powerful example of what happens when there's no compassion, when we forget we're all human.
Yeah, that part was heavy. Especially how he tied it back to the heart as a lens. What if those officers had tried to see things from the other person's point of view? Could things have been different?
Makes you think about the root of the problem, right? Not to say it's okay, but to see how a lack of compassion leads to terrible things. It's so important to really try and see the world through other people's eyes, especially people who are different from us or who we might see as dangerous.
Yeah, how can we even begin to make a fairer world if we don't even try to get where each other are coming from?
That's where the real work of compassion starts. It's not always easy, can be uncomfortable, but it's crucial if we want to come together and make the world a more compassionate place.
It makes you wonder, with everything so divided, so much anger and fear, is a kinder world even possible?
He seems to think so, but it takes real effort. Choosing compassion, even when it's tough. It's about developing that heart lens, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
And starting with ourselves, right? He says to treat ourselves with the same compassion we'd give a kid, especially when we mess up. I feel that I'm my own worst critic sometimes.
Totally. Self-compassion is so important. If we can't be kind to ourselves, it's way harder to be kind to other people.
So how do we build this heart power, as he calls it? It seems like a lot. Where do you even start?
He's got some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He says to learn about compassion, like reading books like this, finding people to look up to, and actively looking for chances to be compassionate every day, making it a habit till it's just who we are.
So it's not just about feeling it, it's about doing something, turning those feelings into action that makes a difference.
Exactly. Compassion without action is useless. It's like a seed that never gets planted. It needs effort to grow. He even suggests volunteering or giving to charity.
Like him buying toys for those refugee kids, he said it made him feel like his life had more purpose.
And that feeling of purpose is huge in the chapter. He says compassion isn't just about making others happy, it's about connecting to something bigger than ourselves, finding meaning beyond our own lives.
Which then makes us feel more fulfilled and satisfied with our own lives.
Exactly. It's a win-win. The more compassionate we are, the happier we are, and the more likely we are to keep being kind and understanding.
So where do we go from here? How do we take all this and actually live it?
That's the big question, right? It's different for everyone. But this chapter gives us some good advice. Start small, keep at it, and remember, compassion is a lifelong journey, not a finish line.
It's like, learning anything new.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get.
Exactly.
Like learning a new language or something.
Yeah.
You're not going to be fluent right away. It takes time and you got to make mistakes. But one thing that really hit me, from this chapter was how the author pushes back against cynicism.
Yeah.
This whole idea that everything's different now. People are just worse,
Yeah.
And he seems to think that kind of thinking, it's dangerous. Almost like it makes itself true,
It is a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get cynical, especially with all the bad stuff we see.
Yeah.
But when we forget the good in people, when we give up on each other, we become part of the problem.
It's like we have to believe things can change, even if we don't see it happening yet.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that everyone can be good and bad. Compassion doesn't mean ignoring the bad stuff. It means making space for people to grow, to change, to believe that things can be different.
It's powerful. It makes me think about that last line in the chapter really got to me. Just start and the rest will follow. It's like we got to do something, be the change ourselves.
Exactly. We can't wait around for someone else to build a kinder world. We start here, right now. Even small acts of kindness make a difference.
And those little things, they might not seem like much, but they can really spread.
Totally. Like Mother Teresa said, what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean. But the ocean would be less because of that missing drop.
I love that. So as we go about our lives, let's remember how powerful the heart is. Compassion can change our own lives, our work, even the world around us.
Let's choose kindness. Try to understand each other. You never know what kind of impact that can have.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the soul warrior. But before we go, one last thing to think about. The author talks about how compassion changes us, our work, how we lead. But could it also heal the divides in the world today? With everything so polarized, can compassion row us back together? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.